Shalom, shalom, shalom. Peace and blessings. All praise to Yahweh by Shem Shah. All praise to Yahweh by Shem Shah. All praises to Yahweh, who the world knows as God, and the name of his son, Yahweh Shah, who the world understands as Jesus, the Christ. Fisherman of Zion, I'm back with another video through the spirit and the power of Yahweh Shem Shah. Don't count this as a light thing to do. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, in the name of his son, Yahweh Shah. Brother Hosea, peace and blessings to you. Peace and blessings to each and every one striving and enduring in these last days to the best of their ability, forsaking the flesh and the cares of this world to the best of their ability. Peace and blessings, all praise to Yahweh in the name of his son, Yahweh Shah. Call hello Yahweh by Shem Yahweh Shah. And I believe I titled this, Stay in the Spirit. I don't have a spouse. That's why I masturbate evil, nasty desires. So Lord willing, you know, with the spirit that the Most High has on us, you know, we can touch on just about any and everything is possible, especially with anything and everything that our brothers and sisters deal with on a day-to-day basis, you know, because the word, let me get this precept right quick. Let me get this precept, because the word basically it's no ceilings, you know. Let me get this precept real quick. It's the book of 2 Timothy chapter 3. It's no ceilings, you know. So whatever the Most High put on our spirit, you know, we're gonna talk about it, you know. Or even if somebody was to be dealing with things in their marriage, you know, we have to talk about these things, because marriage is something that, you know, you're going to constantly have problems in. You're going to constantly have problems when you're single. You're going to have problems with any and everything on the face of the earth, you know. So let me get this precept right quick. Open up with 2 Timothy chapter 3, and I'm gonna start at verse 16, and it reads, it says, all scripture is given by inspiration of Most High God, and is profitable for doctrine, reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. So whatever the Most High has us to go through in life, you know, he has a understanding for it. He has a word for it. He has knowledge for it. You know, he has precepts for it. He has things that we can use to help better ourselves, whether it be finances, whether it be health, whether it be we going through stress, whether it be we dealing with depression, whether it be, you know, we just can't see our way through life, you know, whether it be we having a hard time enduring, you know, shalom, whatever we going through in life, the Lord's word is here, and it's a quickening spirit to help us and to heal us and to help correct us, whatever we dealing with. You can be in life with no father, you know. You can come up with no parents, and the spirit of the Most High God will allow you to understand his word and correct you, heal you, reprove you, show you the right way to go, show you, okay, nah, that's the wrong thing to do. Okay, no, this is the right thing to do. You know, you should, you know, say this when you're having problems with your friends. You should say this when you're having problems on the job. You should do this. So like the Lord said one more time, 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 16, it says, all scripture is given by inspiration of Most High God. So the Most High, he inspired this video. You know, it's not something that I just thought about. You know, the Lord put it on my spirit to make a video about this. I initially had it on my spirit to do a video today, you know, because I understand tomorrow I'll have a lot to deal with, trying to get my house in order before I go on the highways and byways, Lord willing. So it was on my spirit to do a video today. But regardless of what the Most High allow certain brothers and as well as women that have children that they teach, you know, regardless of whatever the Most High has us to talk about, it's inspired by the Most High. And so this is what he's saying in 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 16. It says, all scripture is given by inspiration of Most High God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction. So we have to be reproved and we have to be corrected. You know, it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what your status is on this face of the earth. You know, and it's profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, so we can move along in the righteousness of the Most High God. Because the world's righteousness may not be what the Lord wants, or whatever we think it is. That's why it's so much evil and wickedness that's going on with these religions. People that practice religion, people that follow these false gods, these wicked entities and false idols, because it hasn't corrected us in the path of following righteousness. 2 Timothy 3:17, that the man of Most High God may be perfect. So you're still living, so you still should be growing, you still should be increasing in the aspect of what may be a wicked deed that we may be doing. Even myself, still striving for perfection. It's something for us to clean up and to get better with every day. So it says 2 Timothy 3:17, that the man of Most High God, as well as the woman, may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. And so that's what we got to understand, that the Lord wants us to have good works. How we think, good works on how we carry ourselves on a day-to-day basis, wherever we are, school, work, even if you're homeschooled, even if you're a woman that have your children in homeschool, or if you're a mechanic, construction worker, whatever your occupation is, whatever your life is set up. So like the title says, it says, stay in the spirit. I don't have a spouse. That's why I masturbate evil, nasty desires. So regardless of what you're dealing with in life, if you're married or not married, you have to stay in the spirit, because there's many things that may try to tempt you, may try to afflict you, may try to throw you off course, even if you're married and even if you're single. There's many things that may try to tempt you and knock you off course. Even if you're a child, you're going to be something may knock you off. You may lose a loved one. You may not get accepted to that school if you're a younger adult, teenager. Your plans may not go right. So regardless of what's going on in your life, you gotta stay in the spirit. Many things are gonna try to knock you down, but you gotta ask yourself, how much do you love the Lord? Because if you was in love with somebody, which a lot of people they go through life being in love with somebody. Normally when that happens and what goes on, nothing can keep you away or can separate you from that person. It's only gonna make that relationship stronger. But first and foremost, we are married to the Lord, But regardless of what we deal with in life, we gotta stay in the spirit. Let me get this in Galatians real quick. We gotta stay in the spirit because, for one, we live in the last days, and there's a lot of stuff that's going on that's trying to pull us away from the Lord. But let me get this in Galatians. This is Galatians chapter 5, and I'm gonna start at verse 16, and it reads, Galatians chapter 5 and verse 16. It says, "This I say then, walk in the spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh." Walking in the spirit of the Most High God is opening up your mind and your spirit for understanding, for instructions to be given to you, the word to be, enlightening or upon your mind, your spirit. If you have a drinking problem, walking in the spirit is going to help you turn down drinks. It's going to say, you're going to say, no, I don't need that. Walking in the spirit is understanding that you have an anger, you understanding that you may have an anger issue, and you're probably saying, okay, no, I don't need to let them get the best of me. So walking in the spirit is something that you have to use to exercise with taking your flesh out of the equation. Walking in the spirit is something that we got to do on a day-to-day basis. So reading this again, Galatians 5 and 16. "This I say then, walk in the spirit, and ye shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusted against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh." So your spirit is gonna wrestle, against your flesh. When you get weak, your spirit should be on a level where your spirit is gonna tell you, that you should pray. You should fast. You should get closer to the Lord. You should get in the word. Your spirit should be telling you that. But of course, your spirit got to wrestle against your flesh, and then your flesh is going to try to wrestle against your spirit. So it says, Galatians 5:17, for the flesh lusted against the spirit, and the spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to the one, the one to the other, so that ye cannot do the things that ye would. So it's many things trying to knock you away from keeping God's commandments, keeping God's laws, and doing what he commanded us to do. So we got to understand that it's important for us to have our spirit on a high level where it's strengthened to the point where we can fight against our flesh. And it go on to say, Galatians 5:18, but if ye be led of the Spirit, ye are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, and all of these are based upon the works of the flesh. Murderers, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do these things shall not inherit the kingdom of Most High God. So through Paul, exhorting and getting on, those that should understand that, okay, this man was sent by the Lord to correct us and reprove us and give us knowledge and instructions on what we should be doing. Paul told him, he said, hey, you continue to feed the flesh, you're not going to inherit the kingdom of the Most High God, Yahweh, and his son Yahweh Shah, the righteous, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. You continue to give into adultery, you're not going to inherit the kingdom. You continue to give into idols, you're not going to inherit the kingdom. So we got to continue to have the same mindset. Now I want to go down Galatians chapter 5 and verse 24, and it reads, it says, and they that are Christ, Hamashiach, have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. So we accept, that the Lord gave us a sacrifice. The Lord gave us an atonement. The Lord gave us his son so we can have a way to get back in good standing point with him. So accepting him, we got to understand that we got to crucify our flesh, meaning we got to put all of those wicked, nasty things that pull us away from the Lord. We got to put it in the dirt. We got to cast it out. We got to cut it off. It's not so much, like they say in the world, it's easier said than done, but it's an everyday battle. It's a stepping, another step towards getting better and getting stronger day by day, because every day is a test, and it's a battle that we have to choose whether we want to win or whether we want to lose. And some people, they give up. Some people give up and they just say, well, it's too hard for me, I can't do it. That's not being crucified with the Lord. You believing that the Lord rose, you believing that the Lord got crucified and then he rose, you believe in that. You can't just believe that one time and one day and then say, well, you know what, I changed my mind. It's not real. I don't believe it, And then they start believing it to the flesh, and then they start believing it to false idols, and then they start believing it to all of these demonic entities and things that they want to give into. They want to give their soul into. They want to give their power into. So we have to understand that with the Lord comes sacrificing, it comes fighting, it comes, suffering. Things aren't going to be easy, but every day is a day to get better and to get closer to the Most High God. Like it says in James 4:8, draw nigh to the Lord and he will draw nigh to you. It's another opportunity, another day to get stronger. You go to the gym, or you go on the track and you walk, of course that first day it may, kind of seem like it's bad, but as you continue to do it, it's going to get easier. It's going to get easier. It's going to get lighter. You know, you may have some good days, you may have some bad days. You may have some days where you feel like it's too tough. You may have some days where you feel like, okay, this won't too bad, you know. But every day is an opportunity to get better. Now, I want to get this right quick because like the lesson says, it says, stay in the spirit. I don't have a spouse. Regardless of what your status is, if you're married, if you're not married, first and foremost, we are married to the Most High God, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, the creator of the heavens and earth. This is Jeremiah chapter 3, you know. And a lot of people, you know, they may have excuses and they may have things that they like to make themselves feel okay about, you know. Now, when you're doing wrong and when you're doing wickedness and evil, it's no way of feeling okay, because the Lord is going to judge us all for the things that we do, the things that we don't do. You know, if we're living a life that's pleasing into His sight, He's going to reward us, and with the promises that He promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You know, with the riches of the earth. You know, and if we're doing wickedness, He's going to reward us with tormenting. You know, He's going to reward us with destruction, damnation. So it's going to be a price to pay for everything we do. And whatever we do, it's going to come a price. It may not come right now, but it's going to come sooner or later. Shalom, shalom. You know, so you can't let the spiritual demon Satan get you tripped up and thinking you're getting away with something. You know, even though the Lord said in Hebrews, He will have mercy and compassion on whom He will have compassion and mercy on. But at the end of the day, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you're going to get jammed up. Now we are married to the Lord, so even if you're a woman that doesn't have a husband, even if you're a man that doesn't have a wife, you know, first and foremost, you are married to the Lord. This is Jeremiah chapter 3, and I'm going to start at verse 14, and it reads, it says, "Turn, O backsliding children, said the Lord, for I am married unto you, and I will take you, one of a city and two of a family, and I will bring you to Zion." So we are married unto the Lord, you know. So what business do we have being joined to a harlot, being joined to a false god, being joined into something that the Most High God, the creator of the heavens and earth, hate? You know, we're married into the Lord, you know. So before we even have the understanding or the foundation of being a physical husband that may have a wife and children, or a physical wife, they may have a husband and children, we are ultimately married into the Lord. Let me get another verse. Let me get another precept. Now this is Isaiah 54. So first and foremost, we are married into the Lord. So, you know, like, we should understand that before we become an actual husband, you know, we should be walking like a husband. Before a woman becomes an actual wife, she should be walking like a wife. You know, what business should a woman, the day before her wedding, you know, she just go out and sleep around, you know, and just let all type of men, you know, do whatever they please? You know, that's wicked. What business does a man, before he commits to a woman, you know, just go out and just do whatever he want? You know, that's gonna come with some responsibilities. It's gonna come with some consequences. You know, there's pros and cons to both sides. So this is Isaiah chapter 54, and I want to start at verse. I'm gonna start at verse 1. Isaiah chapter 54 and verse 1, and it reads, "Sing, O barren, thou that didst not bear, break forth into singing, and cry aloud, thou that didst not travail with child. For more are the children of the desolate than the children of the married wife, said the Lord. Enlarge the place of thy tent, and let them stretch forth the curtains of thine habitation. Spare not. Lengthen thy cords and strengthen thy stakes, for thou shalt break forth on the right hand and on the left, and thy seed shall inherit the Gentiles, and make the desolate cities to be inhabited." So you know it's talking about something that the Most High is going to do. So going down to verse 5, It says, for thy maker is thine husband. Isaiah 54 verse 5. For thy maker is thine husband. The Lord Yahweh of hosts is his name. And thy Redeemer, the Holy One of Israel, the Most High God of the whole earth, shall he be called. So we are married into the Lord, you know. So even if you have the idea of understanding, where my father died, you know, such and such years ago, you still have a father that's alive, you know. Or even if you're saying, well, you know, I'm not married, you know, I don't have a spouse. Well, look, you married into the Most High, you know. So you should be moving in the spirit like a husband. You should be moving in the spirit like a wife, you know. That's why, like the Lord says in Revelation, the 144,000, which are men, you know, they are virgins, you know, because the Lord uncleaned them up. The Lord had put them in a position to serve Him, you know, to do His will. So even the same sense as a woman, she's reserved into a specific man, no other men, you know. That one man only. So that same thing with us spiritually, you know, we're connected to the Most High, you know. Let me get this in 2 Corinthians. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 11, and let me start at verse 1. 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 1, and it reads, it says, would to Most High God ye could bear with me a little in my folly, and indeed bear with me. For I am jealous over you with a godly jealousy, for I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ Hamashiach. So Apostle Paul was on a deeper level showing his gratitude and his love to the church, so much so that he wanted to let, you know, the Israelites understand that, look, you can't be serving idols, you can't be eating food with blood, you can't be bugging yourself out, because I'm trying to present you to the Lord as a virgin, you know. So that's the same understanding that we, you know, we're connected to the Most High on a husband and a wife level, you know. So we can't be watching pornography, you know. We can't be masturbating, you know. We can't just be sleeping around. We can't just be having our women whoring out. We can't, men, we can't just be giving ourselves over to any and everybody, you know. We have to have this understanding that, look, we got to strive to be blameless, you know. We got to strive to have ourselves in subjection of sanctification, righteousness, purity, you know, holiness, you know, because it's very important to have that understanding, you know. So even if you're telling yourself, okay, look, I ain't got no wife, the Lord, He's gonna have mercy on me. Or a woman may say, I ain't got no husband, the Lord is gonna have mercy on me, you know. My flesh is weak, I'm masturbating, you know, surely the Lord is gonna forgive me. You thinking it's gonna be so easy for you to stop. What if the Lord presents you to a specific person that you may be interested in? You're gonna continue to do those same things in that marriage. You can't just stop and cut cold turkey like that. Everybody ain't on a level where they can just control these spirits and these demons. You can't just, everybody is not on the Paul level or Yahweh Shah level or Peter level, you know. Can't just cast out spirits. Just when you say, okay, all right, I'm done with that, it's time for me to cut that masturbation off. It's time for me to cut that porn off. Everybody ain't on the level where they can just cast everything out when they say it. A lot of things come with more demons, you know. So you have to understand that, you know, it's better to seek the Lord than to allow the Lord to have some type of sacrifice be brought before you, you know. Now let me get this real quick. This is in the Apocrypha. You know, you may be telling yourself, okay, you know, the reason why I'm masturbating is because I ain't married. You know, I ain't got nobody to lay down with. You can't come up with excuses. You know, that's like somebody saying, that's like a crackhead coming up with an excuse saying the reason why I do coke you know, or the reason why I got on the crack rock or the crack pipe, whatever you want to call it, you know. That's like them saying the reason why I started smoking crack was because my grandma died. You know, what your grandma got to do with you smoking crack? You know, or somebody else coming up with an excuse. The reason why I robbed the bank, you know, because my light bill was due. I ain't had no money to pay my light bill. There's many other ways that you can get that light bill paid. You can go out there and get you a job. You know, even if you had a job, you could have asked one of your family members, hey, can you spare me until I get paid? You know. So having excuses, it's only gonna put you further and further away from the Most High. Yahweh Shem Shah. It's only gonna put you further away. You know, it's only gonna make you weaker. You know, it's only gonna get you to the point where more demons are gonna be overthrown. So this is the Apocrypha in Ecclesiastes. This is Sirach chapter 32 in the Apocrypha. Like we always do, we like to encourage everyone, you know, somebody may be new, to get you an Apocrypha, you know. 16 and 11. I actually got my 16 and 11 right here. You know, the Apocrypha. You gotta get you one. You know, if you ain't got one. Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Well, that one specifically on Amazon, but this is Ecclesiasticus in the Apocrypha chapter 32, and I'm gonna start at verse 17, and it reads. It said, "A sinful man will not be reproved, but findeth an excuse according to his will." So a lot of men and women, you know, they like to make themselves feel good by coming up with excuses. Well, you know, the reason why, you know, I went to her house was because blah, blah, blah. Or a woman may say, well, I felt bad for him. He was a single father, so, you know, we started drinking, and then I laid down with him, and, you know, that's why, you know, we wind up having a baby. So a lot of people come up with excuses. You gotta put yourself in a position to start praying for discipline, start praying for, you know, a spirit of boldness, saying yes and no. Okay, no, I don't need to do that. You know, I don't need to be here. I don't need to be there. You know, you gotta have some integrity. You know. So reading this again, Sirach 32 and 17. A sinful man will not be reproved. So a lot of people they don't want to be corrected. You know, they don't want to be put in the position where they can be examined. Okay, no, this ain't a good thing for you to do. That's not a good thing for you to do. A lot of people, they cut their ears off, and they cut their understanding off. Well, nah, this is why I do this. This is why I do that. And then they come up with all these excuses and a whole list of, you know, what the Lord is going to forgive them for, and how much mercy He's going to have on them. You know, somebody might say, well, I got touched when I was little. Somebody might say, well, I got an addiction. They may come up with all these excuses, which ultimately, at the end of the day, it's only going to add more sin onto more sin, which we should be in a position of decreasing sin, you know, which we ain't gonna be perfect, squeaky clean all in one day. That's why you have what we understand to be as grace and mercy. So we should be asking the Lord to forgive us, you know. So a sinful man, he's not gonna be reproved, you know. You're just gonna keep storing up these thoughts in your mind, you know, making yourself feel good, but really, ultimately, you know, it's just wickedness and more wickedness and more wickedness. Now, let me get this in Jeremiah. This is Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 9, and it reads, Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 9, it says, the heart is deceitful above all things. So your mind going to tell you many things, you know. Maybe you should make yourself feel good. You know, that last relationship, you know, it's so much damage that it could have done to you, you know. It's not that bad, you know. Your mind is going to tell you many things. That's why you got to pray, you know. The Lord said, hey, pray that you enter not into temptation. Your mind's gonna tell you many things, you know. Yeah, you do deserve another woman, you know. Or a woman may say, well, hey, that man, he ain't no good. You need to go out there and get you another man. Your mind is gonna tell you many things. And your mind may tell you, hey, ain't nothing wrong with watching pornography. Your mind may tell you, hey, keep making yourself feel good. So you gotta put yourself in a position where you're gonna glorify the Lord, you know, glorify the Most High, glorify Yahweh, glorify Yahweh Shah, and you gotta glorify the Most High with your body. So it says, Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? So, hey, who can know the thoughts that a lot of people have on a day-to-day basis? You know, who can know the thoughts of a woman saying, well, I don't need a man, and then that woman is dealing with toys and dealing with all type of madness, you know? It's a lot of wickedness that goes on in Babylon the Great every single day, you know? So it says one more time, Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? I, the Lord Yahweh, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. So the Lord, he can allow you to be overthrown by your ways and by your thoughts. That's why it's important to cast all of that out early, you know, instead of letting it linger around, because you can jam yourself up to the point where you're doing more wickedness, you know, and then you're trying to figure out how you got to that point, you know, all because, the Lord, he searched your heart out, he searched your mind out, and he gave you over to your ruins, you know. And that's a scary thing right there, you know. Let me get this in Romans real quick. Romans chapter 8. It's the book of Romans chapter 8, and I'm gonna start at verse 1, and it reads. It says, there is therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Hamashiach Yahweh Shah, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. So if we begin to walk after the Spirit of the Most High, you know, Yahweh and his son Yahweh Shah, you know, our past, it's done. It's gone. You know, now we're clean. But if you turn away from that and you start going back to what you was doing, you know, now you gotta understand that, you know, either you're moving in the spirit of hypocrisy or you're moving in the spirit of a reprobate. You know, because the Lord already allowed you to be clean from what you was given into and what you was overthrowing yourself for. But after that, you know, if you decide, okay, you know, the Lord did die for me, you know, so now I gotta make a decision. You can't just continue to give into your flesh after knowing that the Lord done gave you grace, he done gave you mercy, you know. So a lot of people, they don't just get in the car wreck and just automatically get wiped out. Some people, they get diseases, you know. Some people become that example, you know. Like King David, you know. King David, when he was lusting after that woman, the Lord took that child away from him, you know, laying down with that woman. After that woman conceived, he took that child, you know. So a lot of times, the Lord can judge you by watching pornography. The Lord can judge you by watching all these wicked sites. The Lord can judge you by thinking about another woman. Even if you're a woman, the Lord can judge you. Even if you're thinking about another man, you got to understand that your mind, you know, is so much that can happen just by your thoughts, you know. So if the Lord gave you grace and mercy and he wiped you clean, you got to understand that, you know, it's not a light thing to go from there and to go and to go back doing what you was doing. Now I also wanted to get 1 Thessalonians. This is 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and I'm gonna start at verse 1. It says, furthermore, then we beseech you, brethren, and exhort you by the Lord Yahushua, that as ye have received of us how ye ought to walk and to please Most High God, so you would abound more and more. So, we got to understand that pleasing the Most High God is also, us, how we use our body, how we speak, how we think, how we talk, how we interact with one another, how we show love. Verse 2, 1 Thessalonians 4 and 2. For ye know what commandments we gave you by the Lord Yahushua HaMashiach. For this is the will of Most High God, even your sanctification, that you should abstain from fornication. So you should understand that your body is a way that you can do modern day sacrifices, because back in the day we used to do animal sacrifices, but now it's a time period where prayer is very important. Fasting is very important. What we give our mind unto is very important. Let me get this in 1 Corinthians real quick. So that's very important, what we do with our body. This is so like in 2 Corinthians. This is 2 Corinthians. Let me see where I want to start at. Like I may be looking over it. It's like, let me get this quick piece up right quick. I may be looking over. So yeah, we got to understand that our bodies is very, very pivotal. Now I want to get 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and then I also want to get another precept. So like, let me get this real quick. This is 1 Corinthians, and then I'm gonna get Romans. This is 1 Corinthians chapter 6, and I'm gonna start at verse. I'm gonna start at verse 17. So like, I'm gonna start at verse 16. 1 Corinthians 6 and 16. It says, what? Know ye not that he which is joined to a harlot is one body? For two, said he, shall be one flesh. But he that is joined unto the Lord is one spirit. Flee fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body. But he that committed fornication sinned against his own body. So even wicked desires, like evil concupiscence, that's very important, and very, very vital to fight against your spirit, because ultimately your flesh is ultimately fighting against your spirit. So if you give yourself unto something according to the flesh, it's going to try to wipe out your spirit. And now, even if you are married, because people that are married, they still do some of these same wicked desires too. They still have some of these same wicked desires, which ultimately is a spit in the Most High God's face. Because like he said in Hebrews 13 and 4, marriage is honorable in all. So your marriage should be pure. Your marriage should be holy. So if a husband and a wife, are doing things away from each other, more so if they're masturbating away from each other, like that, the husband he's got evil concupiscence, the wife has got evil concupiscence, that's ultimately that's a bad what's the word I want to use? What's the that's a bad that's a bad cord, you know. That's a bad union. That's a terrible union. That's a defiled union. So a man and a woman should be on the same page, you know. So how in the world the Most High is going to allow, you know, somebody to, that's why the Lord said you can't speak his name in vain. So just imagine somebody saying they're a child of God, they're a man of God or a woman of God, and then next thing you know, they're worshiping the devil. The Lord is going to denounce that person. So just imagine a woman that is thinking about, you know, another man masturbating, you know, and the man, he's thinking about all type of folly and madness, you know. That whole union is defiled, you know, and there's so many things that the Most High can do to that. So the same way, you know, if a man is single and he's thinking about all these wicked things and he's fantasizing about all of these women, and you know, and then you got a woman, she may be single, she's fantasizing about all these wicked things. If they don't repent, you know, before they get married, and then they be brought together, you know, it's going to be demons that are brought into that, whether it's a courtship or whether it's you just dating. That's why a lot of people, they trying to figure out where did they go wrong at in the beginning of the relationship. It's because you got some secret things that you're holding on to. You know, that person is lusting and fantasizing about something, and that person over there is lusting and fantasizing about something. You know, you got all these wicked, nasty desires, and then you try to come to a relationship. You try to come to a friendship, a courtship, and then all hell just break loose. You know, which ultimately you should be abstaining from those desires that you have in your mind. You should be pure. You should be, you know, cleaning up, ground zero. You're throwing all of those wicked desires away, and you're trying to have holy, righteous desires. Now, that's why the Lord said, 1 Corinthians 6:19, what? Know ye not that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit, which is in you, which ye have of God, and ye are not your own. So if you start, for one, spilling your seed as a man, now, you know, we're going to touch on the man aspect, you know, spilling your seed. Now, as it states in Genesis 38:9, that Onan, he spilled the seed. You can read it on your own, you know. Onan was supposed to go into his brother's wife, which his brother died and raised up seed. He wound up spilling the seed. So a lot of people, they go in the scriptures and they say, well, I don't see him in the Bible where it says masturbating is a sin. Well, first of all, it's idolatry. You know, we just gonna call it how it is, and allow the spirit of truth to be represented how the Most High has it intended to be. You know, masturbating is idolatry. Also, it is, you know, evil concupiscence. You know, you got these desires, because when you go into the scriptures, when you go into the scriptures and you look at the blue letter in the Greek, when you go to Galatians 5, we're just gonna go to Galatians chapter 5 for edification. When you go to Galatians chapter 5 and I want to get lust real quick, because that also goes back to lust. So Galatians 5, and I'm gonna start at verse 16. I'm gonna get this in the blue letter. Now this is lust. It's ultimately connected to the same thing. So it says,
Strong's G 1939. Epithumia.
So it says desire, craving, longing, desire for what is forbidden, lust. You know, so all of these connected. You know, evil concupiscence. You know, now I want to get this real quick, because you find evil concupiscence in Colossians. Let me get this definition. Now we know what evil is. It's wicked, ungodly. So we're just gonna get concupiscence. It says desire, craving. Now this is concupiscence.
1939. Epithumia. Epithumia.
So same thing. It says longing, craving. So you having these wicked thoughts in your mind, and you thinking as a single man or a so-called single woman, you thinking that you're just gonna fulfill your flesh for one night, and really ultimately that desire is gonna get stronger and stronger and stronger to the point where you thinking you can kind of just stop and control it. But no, that ain't how the spiritual demon Satan work. When he get a hold of you, for one, he gonna try to destroy you. Now this is Job chapter 2, and I'm gonna start at verse 1, and it reads, Job chapter 2 and verse 2. It's like Job chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, again, there was a day when the sons of God Most High came to present themselves before the Lord Yahweh, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, from whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. So there's many things that Satan, the spiritual demon, wants to do to men, women, and children, and evil concupiscence, that's one of them. Lust, that's one of them, which is ultimately connected. Idolatry, that's one of them. Dealing with your mind, getting in your mind, giving you these desires in your mind, that's another one. So it says, verse 3, Job 2 and 3, and the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth Most High God and eschewed evil, and still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause. So the spiritual demon Satan wants to destroy you without cause. Just imagine, without cause, for no reason, but more so for somebody that just want to give into the flesh. That's a cause. You just want to fulfill the flesh. You just want to feel something. Verse 5. It's like in verse 4. And Satan answered the Lord and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath, will he give for his life. So Satan wants to destroy your life, and the Most High may have somebody set up for you in the long haul. It may not be now, but it may be somebody that may be set up for your life. But either you could be a snare to that person, or that person could be a snare to you, all by giving it to the flesh. You can't stop. You can't put pornography away. So addictions, all type of wicked desires and wicked fantasies in your mind, it can lead to so many more things. And we could do a timeless, endless lesson on this. Masturbating, thinking about that person can lead to you giving into smoking, you giving into drinking, you giving into all type of thievery and robbery. Because a lot of these demons, they're somewhat connected to one another. They can get connected to one another. How do we know that? Let me get this real quick. This is This is Matthew. So you thinking one little old masturbation ain't gonna do nothing. It can jam you up. Because ultimately your mind is straying away from God, the Most High, Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. Now, I want to get this real quick. Now, this is Matthew chapter 12 and I'm going to start at verse 43, and it reads, Matthew 12 and 43, it says, when the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walketh through dry places, seeking rest and finding none. This is talking about this spirit, you know. And you watching pornography, you masturbating, that's an unclean spirit, which the word says uncleanness. You know, it lists it as unclean. You know, verse 44. Then he said, this is a spirit. Then he said, I will return into my house. What house? In somebody's mind, in somebody's vessel. You know, I will return into my house from whence I came out. And when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. Then goeth he and taketh with himself 7 other spirits more wicked than himself. So you thinking you just met that person, trying to figure out where it went wrong at. Well, why is your relationship turning out to be this way, be that way? It's because of idolatry. It's because lust. It's because them demons are working one with another, getting stronger, building up more relationships, you know, more spiritual demonic relationships. And then them went from masturbating, thinking about that ex, or thinking about that co-worker, or thinking about that celebrity, or thinking about, because a lot of the people that you may think about, you know, they got demons too. So that demon that demon that you're lusting after, which that you can say that person that you're lusting after, hey, it's inviting them spirits inside of you. You know, that's why you gotta be careful what you give your mind over to, what you give your spirit over to, you know, because you enjoining yourself into idolatry. You know, anything you put before the Most High, Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushua, the creator of the heavens and earth, it's idolatry. Just understand it, and that's the truth being told. So it says, Matthew 12 and 44. Then he said, I will return into my house from whence I came out, and when he is come, he findeth it empty, swept, and garnished. Then goeth he. Then goeth who? The spirit, these demons. Then goeth he and taketh with himself several other spirits, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of that man is worse than the first. Even so shall it be also unto this wicked generation. So you trying to figure out, you know, where you're going wrong at. You're getting worse. You know, the prayer isn't working. It seems like the fasting isn't working. It's because you're not trying to cast that thing away. You know, you're giving it to it. You like that. You know, you also gotta check yourself and see if you like doing that. If you know, because anything that you like put before the Most High God, you know, that's going to destroy you if you don't cut it off. I want to get this in 1 Peter. This is 1 Peter chapter 2. And I'm going to start at verse 11, and it reads. It says, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11. It says, dearly beloved, I beseech you as strangers and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul. So you got a daily war going on. A war in your mind, trying to destroy your soul, trying to keep you away from the kingdom of heaven, trying to keep you away from the streets paved with gold, trying to keep you away from hearing the well done, my good and faithful servant, trying to keep you away from that crown, you know. That flesh trying to keep you away from living a life of immortality. You know, those thoughts, those wicked, nasty thoughts, trying to keep you away, you know, from reigning with the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. You know, rulership, dominion, glory, you know, spiritual bodies. That's what that flesh wants. It wants to keep you away from all of the good things that the Lord has reserved and stored up. Hey, because like it says, he left to prepare a place for us. He left to prepare a place for us, you know, as a man traveling to a far country. You know, the Lord is, he done his job, so it's time for us to do our job. We got to cut the flesh off, you know. We got to mortify the members, you know. Let me get this in Matthew chapter 5. It's the book of Matthew chapter 5, and I'm gonna start at verse 27. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 27, and it reads, it says, "Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery." And a lot of people, we just gonna call it how it is. A lot of people that still, give into that masturbating, and that demon, is because they done had a lot of relationships and done call it quits. They was with this person 2 months ago, then they call it quits. And they may be thinking about that person. They may be touching on themselves, making themselves trying to feel the same things that they felt with that last person, and then they go meet another person, and then the cycle just continues. It continues and continues, to either the spiritual demon Satan destroys you, or the Most High got to bring in a lifeline, one or the other, and grant you with grace and mercy, and then you repent. But if you don't repent, hey, it's lights out. Matthew 5 and 28. "But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart." So a lot of times when somebody masturbate, they're thinking about somebody. They're thinking about something, and they ultimately, are dealing with idolatry. Even a woman, when she lusting after a man, she's committed adultery already in her mind. Verse 29, Matthew 5 and 29, "And if thy right eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that the whole body should be cast into hell. And if thy right hand offend thee, cut it off and cast it from thee. For it is profitable for thee that one of thy members should perish, and not that thy whole body should be cast into hell." Meaning, hey, in the grave, man. So on a parabolic level, the Lord is saying, cut it out, put it away. Either you put it away, or the Lord is going to destroy you. That's what the Lord is saying. So put that masturbating away, or the Lord is going to destroy you. Stop lusting after that woman, or the Lord is going to destroy you. Stop lusting after that man, or the Lord is going to destroy you. That's ultimately what the Lord is saying. And he wasn't joking when he was saying that. Let me get to some Proverbs real quick. Proverbs chapter 6. It's the book of Proverbs chapter 6. And I want to start at verse 25, and it reads. It says, "Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids." So a lot of men, they like to lust after a woman, and they ultimately want a lot of men, not all men, a lot of men wind up not dealing with a woman, based on for whatever reason, but they ultimately like to deal with a woman in their mind, or a woman like to deal with a man in their mind. May not physically deal with them, but they deal with them in their mind, which ultimately you're dealing with them in your spirit. Now your spirit is troubled. Now you bringing in all type of demons, all type of legions, when ultimately you just, hey, if you're not gonna be physical, you gotta be like Paul, or you gotta be like Yahushua. But if you can't contain yourself, you're gonna have to get married. You're just gonna have to get married, straight up. And Paul said that. Let me get that real quick. 1 Corinthians. And this may be heavy to a lot of people, because a lot of people, they'll say they don't want to be married, they don't want to be with nobody, but behind closed doors, they masturbate. They're watching pornography, or they're looking at somebody's pictures, they're trying to find naked pictures or whatnot, and it's ultimately demonic, So this is 1 Corinthians chapter 7, And I'm going to start at verse. And this whole thing is beautiful. First Corinthians chapter 7. I'm going to start at verse 25. Now concerning virgins, I have no commandment of the Lord. Yet I give my judgment as one that hath obtained mercy of the Lord to be faithful. I suppose, therefore, that this is good for the present distress. I say that it is good for a man so to be. Art thou bound unto a wife? Seek not to be loose. Art thou loose from a wife? Seek not a wife. And if thou marry, thou hast not sinned. And if a virgin marry, she had not sinned. Nevertheless, such shall have trouble in the flesh, but I spare you. So what he's saying, such have trouble in the flesh, it's not easy being married. You know, you got to deal with a whole nother spirit. You know, you got to deal with responsibilities. You got to deal with servitude. A husband, he's got to serve the woman. You got to pay bills. You got to take care of that woman. And a wife, she's got to take care of that husband. You know, may have to cook and clean and things like that. Or they both may have to work depending on, you know, what's going on in the world. You know, everything is, is high. You know, you got to get a house, you got to get a car, you know, got children, you got to take care of them. Many things like that, responsibility wise. And even you got different attitudes. You got to deal with this person's attitude, that person got to deal with that person's attitude. So a lot of people, they may feel like, you know, it's troubling to get married, you know. Now I want to go down. Verse 32, 1 Corinthians 7:32. But I would have you without carefulness. He that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife. There is a difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. And this I speak for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. Now I wanted to go to verse 1. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 1. Touching on the aspect of, if you can't keep yourself away from masturbating and from watching pornography, then you're just gonna have to understand that marriage is the best aspect of not dealing with evil concupiscence. And then you have a way of, a lot of people, even though they're married, they still deal with that, which is ultimately a double loss, a double wickedness. You know, because you have marriage to bring forth another soul, to bring forth children, so you're able to do things in the flesh, and then you still are negating the aspect of, you know, you don't want to put that away, you know. So ultimately you have to put it away, you know. So a lot of people, they married, but they still don't put it away. And then you got people that aren't married and they still don't put it away, which I call it a double wickedness, you know. 1 Corinthians chapter 7 and verse 1. It says, now concerning the things whereof ye wrote unto me, it is good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. So to avoid fornication, you know, hey, you shouldn't just be sleeping around, you know, destroying households. That man took that man's wife, you know, and that woman, she done slept with 3 men in 1 week, you know. Hey, you go ahead, set her down, and you know, stop playing games. Glorify the Most High and be committed, you know. So you got to understand that the Most High, hey, he's going to get up with you. Now, I want to get this in Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3, and I'm going to start at verse 5, and it reads. It says, mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth, meaning, put yourself in subjection of, okay, this is the body that the Most High allowed me to come to the earth with. I'm going to glorify Him with my body. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to use my body for that. I'm not going to use my mind for that. I'm not going to use my eyes for that. So that's what mortifying your body is. Cutting it off, cutting the wickedness off. You know, putting it to death. Colossians chapter 3, verse 5. Mortify therefore your members which are upon the earth. Fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence, and covetousness, which is idolatry. So it tells you straight up. It says it's idolatry. You thinking about that person and that person thinking about that person. All of that is idolatry. You know, which is taking you away from the Most High God, keeping you away from righteousness. You know. Now I want to get Galatians chapter 6 real quick, which ultimately a lot of our actions are going to come with consequences. Now this is Galatians chapter 6, and I'm going to start at verse 7, and it reads. It says, be not deceived, Most High God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. So if you keep sowing every day unto your flesh, you're going to reap corruption unto your flesh. You know, the Lord can plague your mind. The Lord can take away from your spirit. The Lord can take away your understanding. The Lord can take away that zeal. The Lord can take away, you know, whatever He want to take away. Because you want to continue to reap and sow into the flesh, which we should be sowing into the spirit. So reading it again, Galatians 6 and 8. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the spirit shall of the spirit reap life everlasting. So that's what we should be thinking about on a day-to-day basis. You know. Now, I want to get this real quick. In 2 Samuel. 2 Samuel chapter 11. Hey, now King David, he seen a beautiful woman that he want. But he didn't start playing with himself. He didn't start dealing with himself. You know, even though what he did wasn't a righteous act, you know, he laid down with somebody. He didn't continue to play games in his mind and fantasize. You know, he actually laid down, and we're not justifying what he did was righteous, but at the end of the day, you know, you got to put yourself in a position, you know, to do what is a rightful practice. You know, getting you somebody that you care about and that you love, and y'all agreeing on the same things, instead of just fantasizing and playing games. You know, so this is 2 Samuel chapter 11, and I'm gonna start at verse 2. And it came to pass in an eventide that David arose from off his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw a woman washing herself, and the woman was very beautiful to look upon. And David sent and inquired after the woman. And one said, is not this Bathsheba the daughter of Elam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? And David sent messengers and took her. It don't say nowhere where he was meditating all day. He you know, even when he was in the war, in the wars, he was thinking about that woman. It said he took that woman. You know, it said he had his men to go and bring her to him. You know, even though he did something that was not righteous, on the same scale, you know, you got to stop playing games. And women too. You know, a lot of people, a lot of men and women, they walk around as if they're a child, as if they're teenagers. You know, you gotta find you somebody, and you gotta You got to make it known that's what you like, you know. You can't keep playing games and going about your life as if, you know, oh, this is a fantasy, you know. We're not living a fantasized life. We're living reality. You know, David made things a reality. You know, he brought it to life. You know, so that's what we got to do. You know. Now, I also wanted to get Sirach 25, because hey, this is what King David should have done. Sirach chapter 25, and I'm gonna start at verse 21, and it reads 25 and 21, and it reads, stumble not at the beauty of a woman, and desire her not for pleasure. Even though they had a child, you know, the Most High forgave him and didn't allow his sin to be imputed unto him. You know, he asked for forgiveness, he repented, you know, but we still, as men, we can't lust after a woman and use that as an act to lay down with that woman. Even as a woman, you know, you can't lust after a man, use that as an act to lay down with that man. We have to move in righteousness. We Israelites, you know. So Lord willing, this is edifying to you. I'm gonna get Isaiah 26 real quick. Isaiah chapter 26, and I'm gonna start at verse 3, and it reads, Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 3, it says, thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee. So you have to have your mind stayed on the Lord, even when you get tempted at times and you wanna get that urge to masturbate. You gotta have your mind stayed on the Lord, and when that urge try to come, you gotta pray. You gotta open up the Word. You gotta go on a fast. You gotta put yourself in a position to say, I'm about to go to war against my flesh, because I don't want my spirit to be overthrown by demons. You know, I don't want legions of demons to come in and take away what the Lord is trying to bring in as righteous. You know, I don't want these demons to take away my wisdom. I don't want these demons to take away my joy. I don't want these demons to take away me being delivered and the Lord bringing salvation unto me. Isaiah 26 and 3, thou will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusted in thee. Trust ye in the Lord Yahweh forever, for in the Lord Yahweh is everlasting strength. Fisherman for Zion, back with another video. Lord willing, it was edifying to you. Don't count this as a light thing to do. All praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh in the name of his son, Yahweh Shah. Forsake the flesh and the cares of this world. Stay in the spirit, you know, and cast away those wicked desires and wicked, nasty lusts. Shalom.